It is 10:30. I'd like to call to order the January 26, 2011 meeting of the Oklahoma City Airport Trust. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the December 22, 2010 Airport Trust meeting. Motion is second. Any discussion? Cast your votes, and it is approved. Next, we have a presentation coming, and Mr. Director, would you like to introduce that for us, please, sir?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. A few months ago, we added a scope of work to the project that we have been underway with in planning the development of approximately 1,000 acres on the east side of Will Rogers World Airport. And since that development was going to entail a retail component to that development, we went out and sought a little bit of expertise as to the marketing strategy that may go forward as we try to recruit future tenants. I would like Tracy Thompson with Lee Fisher to come up. She was the primary consultant for the East Side Land Development Strategy, and she'll introduce Sharon Woods, who will actually give the presentation this morning. Tracy?
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having us out today. As you guys may recall, back last spring, this trust approved the Strategic Development Program for the Will Rogers World Airport for the East Side Development Program. It covered the FAA requirements, created a land leasing policy, and also created a land use plan for the recommended development program for the East Side program. As a component of that land use plan, we had aviation support, and non-aviation highest and best uses for the property. And as Mark said, since that time, we have engaged Land Use USA, who is a specialist in retail, non-aviation market strategies, to do a market assessment for this property. And Sharon Woods is the principal of that company, and she would like to present today the findings of her study. So with no further comment, I'd like to introduce Sharon Woods. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning. Thank you again for having me here this morning. I wanted to first check to see that this clicker works. Just since some of you are meeting me for the first time or hearing me talk for the first time, a little bit of my background. I'm a certified counselor of real estate. I'm a consultant. A lot of my clients include developers, professional planning firms, and municipalities. So often I'll have a developer ask me questions about what they should do specifically with land that they want to develop to make sure that they can achieve the best absorption rates. And a little bit more about my background. I have 10 years of experience working for Fortune 500 retailers, including Target Corporation, Macy's East out of Cincinnati, and also Kmart Corporation, Sears Holdings. And then about 10 years ago, I went into consulting, and I've been doing that for about 10 years. So that's my background. My expertise really is in site selection, location analysis, land use economics. And so what I'd like to do is spend about 20 minutes, and I appreciate your patience as I go through a quick presentation here. One of the things, and you also have materials in front of you that includes a handout that should be a takeaway that you can take with you, and I'll talk you through some of these exhibits in a few minutes. And before I get into the strategy, I do want to talk a little bit about what we perceive to be the strategy objectives from a land use economics perspective. And I have a couple of points here that are not on this slide, but I think are important to kind of say to set the tone and the theme, the concept. First of all, one of our objectives was to view this as an opportunity to drive economic growth for the city of Oklahoma City, to be an economic growth driver and to create jobs that will help bring residents and bring workers and bring employers as well. It's also about offering choices, new choices to potential tenants that are modern and fresh and, facilities that are not yet developed that could be built to suit, to meet their special needs. It also is about, on the retail side, it's about offering residents with shopping choices. So on a retail strategy side, we often think about residents within a trade area and whether or not they have the opportunities to choose the products that they want and to choose the price points that they want to support their families with basics like grocery, hardware, clothing, the basic family needs that they have. It also is about leveraging the airfield access, leveraging highway infrastructure, leveraging an existing pool of workers and pool of potential shoppers. So leveraging what the city already offers and what the location offers. It's about highest and best use of the land. So, you know, we tested a number of different concepts, but when I developed the strategy, I'm always thinking about what are going to be the best revenue drivers and what is going to knit together to really create the best, highest and best use. It's about urban infill as opposed to rural sprawl. So we have an opportunity here to fill in a part of our urban fabric as opposed to going out to some other type of fringe rural location that just would encourage urban sprawl. It's about creating a knit community as opposed to, you know, now that we've gone more towards the urban core and talking about urban infill, we also want within to be true to the urban fabric and knit together a community that is compact and respects urban fabric as opposed to sprawl. And let's see, I had also the last point here is that it would support what some of the city's downtown objectives are as well. So trying to respect the fact that there are other initiatives and goals and objectives that the city has, particularly for its downtown core and other development areas. So making sure that the strategy does not siphon away from other objectives. And last but not least, making sure that this is really a cameo-type, signature-type project that really celebrates what the airport is about, what its capabilities are, and celebrating what the city can do. So we really want this to be, you know, a project that a visitor might come to and say, okay, this is the, you know, the well-advertised, talked about East Side Development Project. This is what they're capable of, and to be impressed, and to really have it be a signature project. So that's in a nutshell. From an economics perspective and a market analysis perspective, I just want to share that it is a regional approach. It's a quantitative, empirical analysis. We go through a systematic process that involves a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of data crunching, looking at demographics, thinking about what is the expenditure potential of residents within a trade area. So these maps are showing that we went beyond just thinking about how does this site fit within the community, but also thinking about what are the regional attributes of this location, and how does the city fit within the region, and looking at comparisons between counties throughout the region. So it's really quite a large study area that we look at, and not just site-specific. It also involved a comparison to other airports throughout the region, and other airports were used to identify what the employment per capita is across about 600 different unique business categories. So we had a long list of 600 specific business categories that we were able to go into every one of these markets and say, okay, in St. Louis, we're getting X number of jobs per capita in this particular business segment. And what we're able to do is rank all of these markets and to see whether or not Oklahoma City is comparing. Are we measuring up? And I'm not going to get into all of that data. I'm just sharing this with you so that you can hopefully see that it was really a systematic, analytical, empirical process, and that a lot of data analysis went into the work. So there was a market strategy that we did put together. So most of you have probably seen this document. Hopefully some of you have read it. But there's a lot of material in here. This slide that you're looking at now is just an outline of all of the material that's in here. A lot of exhibits. The narrative is actually quite succinct. It's 20 pages. And so if you haven't had a chance to read it, I really hope that you do. And if you have any questions, that you'll come back and funnel them through Mark or through Tracy, and we'll come back and make sure that any questions you have are being fully addressed. So in terms of the strategy, and again, you can follow along on your handout if you go to the very first page after the cover page. You'll see what the development plan looks like. And I'm going to go through some of this fairly quickly. I've got a couple of different tables here. The slide is actually showing the total retail opportunity. It's kind of an average. We looked at a low end and a high end. And we're looking at about 350,000 square feet of just retail, traditional, conventional retail. And to help put this into perspective for you, if a developer were to go out to a suburban-type market and develop a new town center, sort of like the Tinker out by Tinker Air Force Base, that kind of a town center, they'd probably be starting at about 600,000, 650. That kind of tends to be the magic number across the U.S. If we're looking at a conventional regional shopping center with Macy's and Dillard's and Sears and JCPenney, we're often looking at least 1 million square feet. So 350,000 is about half the size of a new town center, town village type project. So it's not, in my view, it's not hugely aggressive. It also reflects the locations of competition in the market, recognizing that the north side of Oklahoma City is relatively more affluent. We have more expenditure potential up there and a lot more competition. We have a lot of activity that's gone on with new retail out in Moore, and we have the Tinker Air Force Base. All of those things have to get weighed into what the opportunity is, and this is a fairly conservative conclusion that also includes a fairly moderate mix of retailers. So the mix that you see here, we don't have Cold Stone Creamery, we don't have, White House Black Market, we don't have, real upscale types of tenants here. We have a pretty moderate mix that's deliberately positioned to meet the needs, the wants and needs and expectations of your core market, which is really your residents that live within the immediate trade area. And I want to also emphasize that the retail strategy reflects a fairly mixed group of potential shoppers, and it includes everything from daytime workers, workers who are actually employed at a job, by a business that's part of the project. We also have potentially airline travelers who have a little bit of time between flights or before or after flights where they might be interested in, having some, leisure type shopping. We have the community college students that are here that are not big spenders, but they're here every day, and there's an opportunity to perhaps leverage some of that. We also have highway commuters. At the crux of two important interstates, 240 and 44, we've got about 100,000 vehicles average daily traffic count, which is pretty good, and anywhere from 50,000 to 80,000 along those corridors past the site. So that's a lot of opportunity there with visibility, highway visibility, to intercept some of that. We also have, if we have some hotels, we already have a lot of hotels obviously in the area, a little bit of room here for potential hotels, opportunity to translate or transfer hotel patrons into potential shoppers for leisure. And then we also have what I would say is just kind of the passer-through visitor that's coming along, may not be a commuter, but is coming into Oklahoma City for other destinations, other recreational types of opportunities, coming to a game, coming to the downtown for other events, conferences. If they're coming past the site, you could possibly translate that into impulse shopping as well. So all of those are weighed in as well, but the core shopper is your resident population, and we do need to think the strategy really is reflective of what their expenditure potential is and what their household characteristics are. So in terms of the format, I'm going to back up a little bit. These two pictures on the slide in front of you, they're kind of nighttime pictures, so the light's a little off, but if you think about just the architecture and the cost of materials that went into these buildings, we're talking about pretty moderate buildings, not real upscale, not real expensive particularly to build. They could be fairly moderate. But there are a lot of modern projects that are being built across the U.S. today that are really focused on density and scale and having smart design worked into them and smart architecture, and really creating a retail village community type of atmosphere. I'd love to be able to achieve that as much as possible with this project, but I also realize we've got a challenge, as the header says up on the top there. It says quality versus lease challenge. If we've got a challenge here where all of the tenants are going to be leasing, and there's a limit in terms of the duration of that lease. So there are going to have to be some compromises in terms of how much money we put into the facilities and into those structures, and still trying to achieve this objective of making a retail village that is enjoyable to shop and really is unique and celebrates, again, becomes that Cameo signature project. So somewhere, figuring out where that balance is could be one of the biggest project challenges. So, and we'll talk about this again later on next steps. I really believe that, the project planning process is going to be critical in terms of making sure that this is done very well. As I go through the next couple of slides, you'll see on the map a white circle that kind of moves around on the map. And so I'm highlighting the area that is just kind of the focus of that slide. So here, the core, really the economic catalyst for the project is this retail village. And that's really important. I bring this up first because I really believe that this village can create the gateway. It creates the identity, the personality of the entire project. This is where you set the tone of what you want this project to say about the airport and about the city of Oklahoma. And it's very important that we do this very well and that it's smartly designed, and maybe we can make more compromises elsewhere in terms of design and architecture elsewhere in the project. But we want to nail this. This is really your number one entrance point off of the highway. And to get this right is just critical. So then I'm moving here. You can see the white circle move to this specific property here that's adjacent to the retail village. And this really needs to be kind of a transition office environment. It's not a freestanding office facility that's kind of seems to be floating out by itself like a ship out in sea, kind of lost. We want to knit this into the retail, again, trying to convey that community, that knit together urban environment, and not just sprawling big boxes scattered around on the project. So these facilities would ideally face north and face towards the retail project and almost feel like they're really part of it. Then I jumped to the hotel sites, and hotel was a tough one. I'll be honest, there are a lot of hotels in the market already and a lot of opportunities, I believe, for additional hotels that could be in other locations. I think that if we do the retail village right, that this could become a really desirable location for hotel brands. They will want to be here if they see that you can pull off and plan and implement the retail portion of the project effectively. But I wouldn't recommend that we just, come in along the highway and just dot in a row of hotels or dot in a row of restaurants by themselves and not do the rest of the project right. These really depend, again, on that retail village, getting that message across. We have a second interchange down here. I believe this is 89th Street. And the reason why I put a little bit of attention on this location for potential convenience-type locations, it's not just that this is, a good retail location, and it's not just that these would be, per se, the highest and best use. The real challenge is that I want to offer a clear location for these types of uses that do not impede what we do in the retail village. Because I can guarantee that these types of uses will want to be up at 74th Street at the corner of that retail village. And we don't, it's hard to come right out and be on the record to say this. We don't want gasoline stations to occupy the prime corners in our retail village. And gas stations like this, we want to give them an alternative choice so that we can do that retail village the best that we can. It's about highest and best use. So it's resisting the temptation to trade down to the first come, first serve. We don't want to do that. We also have opportunities here along the highway for these are what I would call the prime office locations. This is where you get to put, you get to build a suit building that meets your specific needs, and you push it up as close to the highway as you can, and you get your brand, a big sign for your company up on the building that broadcasts that, to 50, 80,000, vehicles every day that go past that site. So those are advertising exposures that are hugely important to businesses like that. And these particular office sites could go for a premium. These are going to be very desirable to some build-to-suit tenants. Then when we move into the heart of the project a little bit more, or the center of the project, we've got a little more room to develop more of a campus-feeling project, a little more green space, and land is not going to be at quite such a premium because you're set back from the highway. So we've got room here to work in some public space. That picture on the right on your screen really shows how, open public space and conservation of green resources can be used to really knit some of the buildings in the campus together. So rather than having a building that has its own green space and patio and outdoor areas, for its employees, what you're doing is creating more of a campus design where the different businesses are sharing green space and encouraging the community to come together. And so again, it's really important to bring in a planning team that can really lay this out well. The plan that we have here is a parcel plan, but it's not necessarily showing how the facilities would knit together to create a community, and that would be one of the important next steps. And just for the interest of time here, I'm going to kind of try to accelerate for you, and I apologize there. There's a couple of exhibits in the handout that I'm going to jump to. Exhibit A6. And that exhibit shows some potential tenants that could fill this type of office space. Again, many of these are build-to-suit tenants. If you look at Exhibit A6, these facility sizes on office, at the very top it says electronic shopping, mail order houses, technical trade schools, news periodical, book directory, publishing companies, data processing. They would typically build a 45,000 square foot, 3-level structure and just lease or occupy 1/3 of the space, and usually the top level. And then they'd get their brand out on the building, out on the highway. And then they would sublease perhaps the other 2 floors or even more of the space than that. And they could sublease to some of these other types of tenants. The second segment down there shows that I do see an opportunity here for a little bit of health care support. It's not necessarily a big hospital medical campus, but perhaps, an urgent care kind of medical support, supporting what's already here. And I believe Oklahoma City is quite strong in the medical category. And then we also have the direct and indirect aviation, leveraging, again, this airfield access that we have. And the parcelization, the Lee Fisher team worked back and forth with our team in terms of refining this to the point where we could really optimize the number of parcels that have airfield access and making the parcels of a reasonable size to get as many facilities in there. But this is, I do want to emphasize here that this circle is not a 10-year plan. To be realistic, it's probably a 20, 30-year plan. And again, the catalyst here is really that retail village that sets the tone. So we've already talked about the handouts. And the next steps really include getting input from you. And part of our reason for being here today is we wanted to give you an opportunity to ask us questions, share your thoughts and ideas, facilitate some discussion if you would like, and go back and address any questions that you have before we go final on the strategy. And then the next important step is planning, making sure that we've been doing a lot of financial planning, a lot of strategic thinking and planning. The next steps are, how are we really going to design this? how are we going to brand it, and coordinating those marketing efforts with the city staff as well, and then going through various approval processes. So I guess at this point, I'd like to, Tracy, do you have anything that you would like to?
We would be pleased to take any questions that the trustees may have about Sharon's presentation or any part of the project. And if there aren't any, we'll move on with the agenda, but we're certainly here to answer any questions.
Questions from trustees. Terry?
And the question I have is, are you really looking at what makes it different from the opposite side of town? Instead of just having since this is aviation related, instead of having the same type of, because some of the retailers that you're there, it doesn't differentiate from the same ones I would just drive just a few blocks down the road from. Mm-hmm. And it seems like to have a property that's going to be more on the high-end property area, that there should be some type of uniqueness about it or difference about it. Mm-hmm. And so are you really taking that portion into consideration?
Yes, we spent quite a bit of time actually going through the deductive process of filtering through all of the brands that were in the market and worked hard to identify brands that really would be new and would offer new choices. And that's, part of what work went into, kind of those brand recommendations. I understand what you're saying. When I say unique, a lot of it has to do with the urban designing of it, how it feels when you come in to the district, and how it feels when you come into the village, making it pedestrian friendly, having parking that's front door access, making it walkable so that you can walk from the business that you work at into the retail village in order to get these conveniences. So you may be walking through a different kind of shopping environment to get to CVS, but you're not necessarily coming to, Coldwater Creek. And that was, it is a project challenge. I will absolutely understand the question, and I agree that it's, a challenge to marry that.
Chief?
Did you look at the areas around that for along 74th Street, along 240? We're losing business to another community and other, for other reasons. And did you look at why that was and still think that it would work over here, or you think you need to add it back because it's not on 74th anymore, or was there any connection with that at all?
Yes, definitely. That was part of our retail inventory and acknowledging that we've got some retail transitioning that's happening in the marketplace. Part of it is, you're on the right track. Part of it is adding it back. Part of it is competing, saying we're not going to just settle for losing business and letting it all shift. We're going to come in and intercept some of that, and to get that opportunity to intercept those expenditures before it's all dissipated and before it's all shifted. And did I understand your question?
Yeah.
It is, your questions are right on, that this is not a slam dunk easy project by any means. So the planning process will be very important, and having, the backup from professional planning consultants to help through that planning process and making sure that it's implemented in a quality way without going so upscale that we've missed the mark. They're not easy things to do. I know it can be done, but it's not something that's done hastily. Other questions?
A couple of questions, if I could. I'm a little bit confused. What is the prime driver for the successful East Side development? Is it possible? Is it the airplane or aviation, related businesses, or is it the retail village? I got from your comments that maybe the retail village you think drives the whole project, and did I get the right impression?
I will say that the retail village is what creates the environment that makes this location competitive for other types of businesses, as well as the airfield access. I mean, that's obviously a huge plus. That's a big plus for direct and indirect aviation, even, warehouse, logistics, distribution. But competing with other locations for those types of uses can be, your ability to compete can be enhanced significantly by creating this environment that can be created with an attractive retail district, by offering those shopping choices and creating a knit-together community project, as opposed to there are just too many bread and butter locations where you can go throughout the market and many other American cities where you just drive in and it just feels like just another business campus. And that's where I'm saying it needs to be unique, not so much on the tenant mix as unique in the environment, to say this is modern, we're poised for current trends on how we treat urban planning, how we plan our communities and how we build our communities, and really letting this project demonstrate that we understand that, and we're going to differentiate ourselves from all the other business parks, across the U.S. by really doing this effectively and doing it well.
And then I heard, excuse me, Mark, if I could, on page 3 of your handout, you talk about the primary trade area having a per capita income of $21,000. That doesn't match with my perspective of that particular area. When you take 240 as a dividing line, if you go south of 240, you run into some of the most affluent neighborhoods in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
Now, when you run north of 240, you have a different demographic situation. Are we giving credit for the money that's in the southwest portion of Oklahoma City?
Absolutely. It's definitely worked in. The challenge is that the homes are large, the homes are upscale, but when we count the rooftops and do the math and add it all up, they don't offset enough the large number of households that we have that are really earning more in the 17 to 18 to 19,000. So those households are definitely affluent and they're on the high end of the spectrum, but even loading them into the numbers, they don't offset it enough. So they're offsetting it to 21,000. But if you go north of the market, it's quite a bit higher.
And so if my goal was to make this retail village the savior for the defunct Crossroads, I'm going up the wrong path.
Could you say that again? I mean,
well, we had a major upscale. I would call it upscale, and Allison, you may disagree. Years ago at Crossroads Mall,
yes, I'm familiar with the
Dillard's,
project.
we had the Macy's, we had those
and they're all
stores
gone.
that you met earlier. And your design of 350,000 square feet, if I interpret it right, this is not intended to replace that.
Absolutely not. And we can't, because much of that has already been replaced by what's going on south and more. So a lot of that has already dissipated. It's already gone to Tinker. It's already gone to other locations. So we are a little late to the gate. And we're having to figure out, it was 350 was not easy for us to carve out. I'll be honest. It's a challenging project. And we're not going to just come in and build 350,000 square feet of space and have tenants line up, to want to fill it. We're going to build it as they come, and to meet their needs, hopefully in a smart urban retail village type design. But that's kind of what's left to work with. We've got 350,000, and I'm saying let's intercept that. Let's get it. Let's go for it before it's all taken elsewhere. The Crossroads is just an old dinosaur of a different breed.
Sharon, can you go back to the map again, please, on the slide, so that we could see? I had just a question on the parcels where you have the area between 74th and 89th Street. We had in our overall plan, and a plan is just a plan. Of course, it changes based on development. We said we had that whole corridor along Interstate 44 as retail, and I noticed you carved the south part of that corridor out for office space. Retail could support, I mean, could there be an argument that retail could actually really gel and actually go through the entire corridor there between 74th and 89th? Is that possible?
Sure. I hope you prove me wrong and that there's an opportunity for more than 350,000 square feet. I would love to be able to come back and see that really, if you double it, you could double it, and instead of office along that corridor or hotels, which, there are a lot of hotel choices already.
And professional office space is absolutely critical for that area, and I see where that would just have super frontage for those corporations.
Absolutely. There does need to be some flexibility in the plan, and again, professional planners who design these things know how to work that in. They can do a lot of overlay zoning, they can do, form-based codes. There are a lot of, modern tools out there that communities can use to help, work that sort of flexibility into the plan. And I do, what we've done is said we've got room for 350,000 square feet of retail. I want that to be, if that's all we've got, it needs to be compact, and we want to get it at that crosshairs to shorten those walking distances as much as possible, as opposed to just stripping it out along the highway. That's one approach. Now, if we come in and say, you know what, we've got a developer who says he's going to build 600,000 square feet town center, and he can show us that he can have letters of interest from enough retailers to fill 75% of the space before he puts a shovel in the ground, then by gosh, let's shift some of these uses to accommodate that. But we want to make sure that due diligence that challenge is put to the developer to come back and demonstrate that he really can fill the space and that we're not just doing it on speculation.
I've seen some developments like this, and they blend very well with office space and retail and nice restaurants and things. Just for the trust, just wanted to mention we have been involved in this process for a couple of years or so now, and we really are at a point that we're ready to take it to the next step. One of the first major infrastructure steps is to relocate Portland Avenue, and that process is starting with engineering consultants, which have been designed to put in the new water line with the utilities department, and Public Works and the airport will be working together closely to actually do the roadway relocation after that water line is put in. One of the other critical next steps is we're tired of talking about the East Side Development Plan. We're wanting to give it a name. And so my staff will be working hard on that with Tracy and with Sharon's help, and also with the Chamber of Commerce. We started marketing efforts with that yesterday, and also the Chamber is very interested in going forward with a pamphlets and a animation and some marketing materials to take on their roadshow. We've been approached to do that as well. So this is starting to be in a position to be marketed very heavily. I know Sharon had lots of conversations with the development community. We had meetings with the development community a few months ago, so they have been engaged in this process, and I think probably a lot of their views are reflected in your assumptions here. So I will bring probably next month an amendment to the scope with Lee Fisher. We want to, I think, keep Sharon's advice on hand for a while as we go forward with the process, and so we will still be using her some. So we right now she was just to develop this plan, and now that that's done, but I do see maybe a need that we might need some other services, so we'll be looking to do that. Thank you for the presentation today.
Thank you.
Very good.
One more question.
Sure.
You said you studied the other, and you had a map up there with these other airports like Little Rock and Nashville and Kansas City and Albuquerque. If this were to be built with the retail village that you're talking about and the other development with the supporting aircraft businesses in there, where would that place Oklahoma City in comparison to the other airports that were on that map?
It would move it up from the bottom, towards the bottom of the list, to about average. So the strategy is, when we work through those numbers, and we use those other communities as standards, we always take a conservative approach. So what we do is we average what the employees per capita are across various businesses for all of those markets, and we apply that average as a standard. We don't try to move it to the top of the pack because we know that it just wouldn't be fair. So we're trying to move it from middle, lower, up to average, and we feel that that's realistic and achievable without being too blue sky.
And it may be in the documentation, I missed it. Who's at the top right now?
It depends on every business category. I mean, it varies category to category. And I do believe that if you have a copy of the report, and if you don't, I have an extra here I can give you. But there's actually tables in the appendix that go through and demonstrate who's at the top for each of those categories. And it's like a 10-page table that goes through each one. So in one market, it may be educational attainment. Another market may be at the top on medical. Another market may be on the top in terms of recreational venues. It really varies market to market. But, in many cases, if we see that Oklahoma City just isn't on par where it should be in the pack, we try to move it up. We try to raise the bar a little bit and see what that translates to. We can do the math backwards and say, well, if it could be average, does that mean there's room for 50 jobs in that category? There might be room for only 10 jobs in that category. And we identify the categories where there's room for the most number of jobs. If there's room for 250 jobs, then we peel that off and we take a closer look at it. And we look at all the ones where there is a best opportunity and see if we can knit something together. And that is really the process that goes into that table on I believe it was A6 in your handout. That is kind of the strategic thinking process that helps us knit together, a little business community that says, okay, this is electronic shopping, a news periodical, book, directory publishing company, a data processing company. Those things kind of harmonize together. They have the same kind of flavor. And then if you come down to medical urgent care, outpatient care, nursing care, offices of physicians, those are other categories that kind of filtered up and said, you know what, we're not at par. Even though we have a lot of medical in the city of Oklahoma City, a lot of it is very quite advanced research type. I mean, the city is very well known for its advancement in medical research and technology. But there's still, within the vicinity of the airport, there's still an unmet need for basic medical care. So this is not high-tech medical research. We're not doing biomedical, scientific, chemical analysis. We don't have wet labs. We're just providing basic health care to the families within the trade area. A long answer, sorry. You got me
Well, what I
going.
was looking for was something very simple. If I want to know what a whitewater rafting venue looks like, I've seen the one in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I say, wow. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want in Oklahoma City, the ability to say, wow. And what I was looking for was, if we do all this development around the airport, if somebody comes in and looks at it, I'd like them to say, wow, this is the greatest. Who do they say wow about right now? And that may be an unfair question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a leader, forgetting all the differences between medical and electronics and et cetera, has some area done a job that when you look at it from a consultant standpoint, you say, wow, that is the icon?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a very good question, and I'd have to ask if I could come back and maybe offer, some
if you just
analogs.
Send it, say, hey, Kansas City is the greatest thing, or whatever it happens to come out.
I'm not sure.
Specifically about airport properties, airport development
Yeah,
properties?
the development around the airport, because that's what we're talking about right here.
Right, or on airport property or near airport property. Kind of the flagship airport, smaller airport that's done this for years is El Paso, Texas. I don't know if you've been to the El Paso
Been there,
airport.
okay, thank you.
But El Paso was a front runner for on-airport commercial development. They have wonderful golf courses and spa resort type facility.
Okay.
And they have also and transitioning into the air cargo and other more traditional airport facilities, and they have retail, and they're just a mecca for hotels. They make more money off their hotel revenue than they do on their airline revenues. So El Paso is a good example. My old airport, DFW Airport, is also a leader in the aviation industry for on-airport development. Because of its geography, they actually have individual development areas, some in the north, some in the south, that have their own flavor. But International Commerce Park, which is in North Irving on the Capel side, northeast side of the airport, is really known for its headquarters for Avial and some other type big aviation type industries. And that airport's developing that office flex space for only that character type of space in phases. So that's a good one. Denver Airport, Pena Boulevard, has a big wow retail strip center where their rental car facility is. As you come into the airport, they've created some shopping venues for their customers and passengers for the airport. So those are a few examples of airports who have taken the opportunity to leverage their real estate asset in these non-traditional aviation ways. So those are three examples.
Thank you.
To answer an earlier question that you had about the aviation versus the retail, that what Sharon has talked about today is putting together a retail package that is from the city into the airport, meaning that your customer is going to be your residents and the developer community is going to be your traditional retail developers doing a deal on airport land. Certainly, the direct aviation uses are what the traditional, what Mark and all airport operators, the traditional direct aviation airline type users. And then there's the Malcolm in the middle. And the Malcolm in the middle, of course, is your distribution and your flex and your logistic type industrial uses that transition between your direct aviation, your retail, and then the buffer in the middle. And those, as Sharon was saying, those uses are the catalyst for development of those come both from the aviation side and the retail side. So hopefully we'll be marketing from both directions and then filling in the middle. And I apologize for just jumping in, but
that's okay. I do want to come back one more time, on your question. I do want to explain, too, that one of the next steps is on the marketing piece. And the analysis that we did here was looking at 7-mile rings and looking at employment within 7 miles in all directions of all these airports, not so much just focusing in on what have they done right at the airport and what has worked at the airport. But that is one possible thing that we are proposing doing as part of the marketing, is to say, where can we go to these other communities? And Tracy's already identified, 3 of them. But where can we go and identify success stories and come back and offer to you marketing ideas that, these other airports have done to help make their projects a success? And we have not done that step. And that would be a future next step, is to go into El Paso and say, okay, let's take a closer look at that project and what have they done to make that project a success in terms of marketing, in terms of, the strategy even, and how can we learn from that and perhaps even, copy what they did. Nothing wrong with copying.
I got one more question, and maybe this is for Mark, I don't know. The far west side of this is aviation related, even with tie-ins to the new taxiway. Is there a market? Are we going to be competing with the MRO around Tinker, or is this a different niche that you're looking at?
Actually, I think there'll be good synergy there. That's one of the things that was always on our minds as we went through this planning project. And you have Air Inc., which is now on the west or east side of the airport, west side of this development. Now you have Atlantic, which is the FBO, which now has its hangar under construction. And I believe that activity will just grow additional aviation activity. And we continually have interest from time to time. But now that we're putting in the infrastructure, we think that the time is right, not just for this non-aviation and retail development, but it's going to spur future aviation-related development that will be associated with that taxiway and access to the air side. And that's one reason why we're doing on this agenda later taxiway hotel reconstruction and realignment to be ready even further to be able to handle larger aircraft potentially. I do want to mention, Sharon, thank you so much for the presentation. And we actually did visit El Paso early on before we even started the land use planning process. Myself and a couple of staff went down and talked to the airport director and some of their staff on how they did their Butterfield operation, which is the name of their non-aviation facility down there. Thanks again.
Thank you for coming. Moving along then to Will Rogers, Mr. Chairman, or Director.
Thank you. I have no director's report. Under Will Rogers, we want to receive the marketing strategy final report that you've just heard. Item B is to approve supplement number 1 to the contract with changes the name of the Wackenhut Corporation to G4S Secure Solutions USA Incorporated. Item C is to accept the completed headquarters building window replacement project for Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center. D is to approve change order number 4 for the base maintenance building elevator replacement project for Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center, adding $5,629.24. E is to approve the plans and project manual for the air traffic building mechanical piping installation project, another Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center project, authorizing advertisement for bids to be opened on February 22nd. F is to approve the plans and project manual for the installation and maintenance of a closed-circuit television camera system. This is our 100% reimbursed TSA project. Accept the list of pre-qualified bidders and authorize bids to be opened on February 22nd. G is to approve the professional services agreement with MacArthur Associated Consultants, LLC, for the Taxiway H reconstruction and alignment for $620,707. Item H is to approve the joint resolution with the City of Oklahoma City to submit grant applications to the FAA for the project to reconstruct and realign Taxiway Hotel, designate the Trust General Manager to be the representative for the grant, authorize the official representatives to sign the documents for the Trust and City. And that's all items under Will Rogers, sir.
Thank you, sir. Trustees, pleasure.
Move item 5.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And it is approved, adopted. While we post and currency pays.
Under General Aviation, we have 3 items to adopt the resolution for the Airport Trust accepting the bill of sale for the title of hangars 10 and 11 and some associated ramps for those hangars from the Oklahoma City Development Trust to the Oklahoma City Airport Trust for Wiley Post Airport. Item B is to approve amendment number 3 to the agreement with Thales ATM for the installation of the ILS for runway 35 right at Wiley Post Airport. This will be providing for the installation of an underground bore that was not caught during the original design. Increases cost by $15,937.50. And item C, approve the plans and project manual for the fuel tank removal and installation project for Clarence E. Page Airport, advertising bids to be opened on February 22nd.
Trustees, pleasure on item number 6.
Move to accept item 6.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. And they are adopted and approved. General items.
Request approval for the delinquent accounts receivable report, the construction status report, and the budget to actual report. Item B is to receive staff report and approve the recommendation regarding uncollectible accounts. Item C I'll come back to in just a moment. Item D is to approve amendment number 2 to the construction contract with Cactus Construction Company for the annual utility repairs and maintenance project, renewing the contract for 365 days or not to exceed $300,000, whichever occurs first. And back to item C, Mr. Chairman, at this time I would request that you open a public hearing relative to the junior lien tax-exempt bonds for the 30th series of bonds that we're planning to refinance some previous airport bond financing projects that accomplished several project improvements at Will Rogers World Airport. We also have a short presentation today to give you some more information on that.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Let's open that public hearing. We do not have to vote on it. We just open it. I'll open that, and let's proceed with the presentation.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Bill Case with Public Financial Management to come up and speak a little bit more to the specifics of this refunding Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Excuse me, my name is Bill Case. I'm with Public Financial Management. We're the financial advisor to the trust. So we have a presentation here that gives a little background on the refunding that the trust is proposing to undertake. On slide 1, we show the purpose of the refunding. There's 2 series of junior lien bonds that are planning to be refunded. The 22nd Series B with the maturity of July 1 of 2013, and also the 27 Series B. The maturity there is July 1, 2012 through 2017. Based on current market rates, the debt service savings is projected to be approximately $2 million over the life of the bonds, or approximately $289,000 of savings each year. Looking at that on a present value savings basis, that's $1.8 million, or approximately 6.14% of the refunded bond par size, which is a very solid refunding. On the next slide is the timetable for the financing. The trust and ourselves had calls with the rating agencies last week, and we're expecting ratings by the end of the week, January 28th. Once we receive ratings, the preliminary official statement will be posted. It's expected to be February 1st. With that schedule, we'll be in the market on February 8th to sell the bonds, with a closing of the transaction occurring March 3rd, at which time the 2 series of existing bonds would be refunded. The next slide shows the financing team. Bank of Oklahoma is a senior manager, with co-managers being Morgan Keegan and Wells Nelson Associates. The Underwriters Council is Williams, Box, Forsey, and Bullard. The other parties involved in the transaction is ourselves as financial advisor. The Public Finance Law Group is the bond counsel, with Kutak Rock being special tax counsel. The auditor is BKD, and then the paying agent for the bonds will be Bank of Oklahoma. The next slide just provides a little bit more detail on the series of bonds that are to be refunded. The 22nd series, as I mentioned, the maturity date is July 1 of 2013. Currently has an interest rate of 5.35%, and the amount is $625,000. 27 series has coupons of 5.75%, and it's approximately $29 million of par that would be refunded. And as comparison, with those rates, the current market rates right now have yields of 1.75 to 4.5%. So yields will be coming down, and hopefully savings will be realized on this transaction. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take.
Questions from the trustees? Would you like to add anything, Mark?
No, you might ask. I think we need to see if there's any questions from the audience as well.
Is there anybody here from the audience and from the public that would like to ask any questions?
I do want to mention that this item will be also, it's going to be docketed on next Tuesday's City Council meeting, so that we have this approved by the Trust and City Council before we sell the bonds on the 8th. That's rather important. So I appreciate, Bill, you coming down and give us this extra information on this item. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm requesting that we approve items A through D, including the public hearing and the resolution, to go forward with the bond sale. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And it is so done. Lease agreements, item number 8.
Item A is to approve a lease agreement assigning the lease between the Trust and Lee Holmes Trust, Lee Holmes trustee, for the lease of a hangar site for the storage of privately owned aircraft from Lee Holmes to Arthur M. Allen or Shirley I. Allen, effective February 8, 2011, at Clarence E. Page Airport. Item B is to approve supplement number 33 to the 2103 lease with the Federal Aviation Administration Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center This revises some lease boundaries, makes some adjustments to land rentals, and also the maintenance and insurance cost for Will Rogers World Airport. Item C, approve supplement number 19 with Trajan Flight Support, doing business as Atlantic Aviation, adjusting their rentals, rates, and charges effective February 1 for Wiley Post Airport. Item D is approve the hay cutting supplement number 2 with Harold Leland Clark. This removes 3 acres from his leased premises, revising rentals and updating the exhibits at Will Rogers. Item E is to approve supplement number 2 with the Service Center, doing business as Valair Aviation, recognizing the name change to Valair Aviation, and revising rentals in accordance with the minimum standards. Item F is supplement number 1 to the passenger airline operating and lease agreement with Frontier Airlines, extending the term of the signatory agreement commencing January 1, 2011. Item G is approve the newsstand gifts and specialty retail shop operation agreement with Parady's Cambers, LLC, to manage the newsstand gifts and retail concept stores for 10 years commencing June 1. At Will Rogers World Airport, item H, approve the supplement number 4 lease agreement with Hangar 80 LLC. This is expanding the lease premises, providing for the construction of a second hangar, and also has some land as an option period for future development purposes for Will Rogers World Airport. And item I is to approve the assignment and assumption agreement. Hangar 80 LLC will be now known as Hangar 84. And this item makes that possible at Will Rogers World Airport. That is all the items under lease agreements this morning.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any questions? Please cast your votes. And it is approved. Item 9.
Request adoption and approval of the requisitions, please.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Please cast your votes. And it is adopted. Are there any comments from the trustees? Seeing none, from the staff? Any citizens wishing to address the trustees? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. Thank for your presentations, for answering our questions. Jim, nice to have you filling in for Mr. Couch. You did an excellent job. We are adjourned.